Ever picked up one of the Gospels and thought it felt a little slow? Well, then you haven't read Mark. This thing is the complete opposite. It's short, it's punchy, and it might just be the very first one ever written. Seriously, it reads less like a biography and more like an action movie, and today we're going to break down its blueprint.
So what is it that gives Mark this unique, this breathless energy? What was the author really trying to accomplish with this story? Well, let's dive in and find out.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with Mark's big idea. Then we'll get into the story's origins, the who, what, when, and where. From there, we'll look at its action-packed storytelling style, unpack its core teachings, and finally, we'll map out its narrative blueprint. Sound good? Let's get started.
Okay, first up, Mark's big idea. Let's get right to the heart of it. What is this book really all about?
Mark does not mess around. He puts his entire thesis statement right there in verse 1. He's not just telling a story, he's telling us this is the beginning of the good news. And what is that good news? That Jesus is the promised Messiah, the Christ, and yep, the divine Son of God. That's it. That's the main point right up front.
And let's zoom in on that word gospel for a second. The original Greek is euangelion. Now, before Mark came along, this word usually meant a spoken announcement. Think of a town crier shouting out news of a king's big victory. What's so amazing is that Mark might have been the very first person ever to take that word and apply it to a written book. That's a huge deal. It completely changed how this story would be told forever.
So this book is kind of doing two things at once. On one level, it's a record of what the apostles saw and heard, their testimony about Jesus. But it's so much more than a history lesson. It's designed to look you, the reader, right in the eye and ask, okay, you've heard the good news. Now what? Are you going to follow him? It's a direct, personal call to discipleship.
Okay, so where did this incredible story even come from? I mean, who wrote it? When? For whom? Getting a handle on the who, when, and where is absolutely key to unlocking its message.
All right, so the early church tradition is pretty solid on this. The author was a guy named John Mark, who was a close companion of the Apostle Peter. In fact, a lot of people think Mark was basically Peter's interpreter, that he was writing down Peter's raw, eyewitness accounts of his time with Jesus. And he was probably doing this from Rome, writing for a non-Jewish or Gentile audience sometime in the mid-50s to mid-60s AD, which, if you think about it, makes this the first gospel to hit the scene.
And how do we know he was writing for Roman Gentiles? Well, Mark leaves clues all over the text. He'll stop and translate Aramaic words for his readers. That's the local language Jesus would have spoken. He also takes the time to explain Jewish customs that his audience just wouldn't get, like ritual hand-washing. It all points to one big idea. This good news about a Jewish Messiah isn't just for Jewish people. It's for everyone. And the ultimate proof? The story's climax, where a Roman soldier looks at the cross and says, "Truly this man was the Son of God."
All right, let's switch gears and talk about how Mark tells his story, because trust me, his style is totally unique.
There's this famous quote from a scholar who said the Gospels are basically passion narratives with long introductions. So what on earth does that mean? Well, it means they're not like modern biographies, trying to cover every single detail of someone's life. Instead, everything in the story, every single miracle, every teaching, it's all pointing toward one massive, climactic event, the final week of Jesus' life, his death and his resurrection. That's the destination.
And man, does Mark build towards that climax with speed. Reading his gospel feels like you're watching a fast-paced docudrama. He packs it with these vivid, you-are-there details. And get this, his favorite word is immediately, which he uses over 40 times. Jesus immediately does this, immediately goes there. It creates this constant, breathless sense of forward momentum. There's no time to waste.
Mark also has this really cool literary trick up his sleeve, something scholars have nicknamed the Markan sandwich. Here's how it works. He'll start a story, then hit pause. He'll insert a totally different story in the middle, and then he'll go back and finish the first one. It's not random. He's forcing you to put these two stories together to see how they comment on each other. It's his way of saying, hey, look closer, there's a deeper connection here.
Okay, here's a classic example. You've got Jairus, a synagogue leader, who comes to Jesus desperate. His 12-year-old daughter is dying. So Jesus starts heading to his house. That's story A, the first piece of bread. But on the way, here's the filling, a woman who has been sick for 12 years touches Jesus' cloak in faith and is instantly healed. Story B. Then, Jesus gets to the house and raises the 12-year-old girl from the dead, finishing story A.
You see it? Two stories, both linked by the number 12, both about faith, and both showing Jesus' absolute power over sickness and even death. It's brilliant.
So, with all this action and clever storytelling, what are the core teachings Mark is trying to get across?
This brings us to one of the biggest mysteries in the entire book. If Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, why is he always telling people to keep it a secret?
Yeah, this is what scholars call the messianic secret. Over and over again, Jesus heals someone and then says, hey, don't tell anyone about this. Peter finally figures it out and says, you are the Christ, and Jesus immediately tells him to zip it. Even the demons who know exactly who he is are told to be quiet. So what is going on here?
Well, it turns out there are a few really important reasons. First, the popular idea of a Messiah was this political, military king who would kick the Romans out. Jesus needed to completely dismantle that expectation. Second, he definitely didn't want any endorsements from demons, right? But the biggest reason is this. He first had to redefine what being the Messiah even meant. His true identity could only be fully understood through the lens of his suffering, his death, and his resurrection.
And this right here is the central paradox in Mark. It's this incredible tension. On one side, you have Jesus, the Son of God, who is powerful and authoritative over nature, sickness, even demons. But on the other side, you have Jesus, the Son of Man, who came to suffer, to serve, and to give his life. And that's Mark's mic drop moment. He's showing us that true divine power isn't about ruling with an iron fist. It's revealed through sacrificial love.
Okay, last section. Let's pull back and look at the whole blueprint. How did Mark structure this whole thing?
It's actually beautifully simple and really powerful. Think of it like a two-act play with a prologue and an epilogue. After a quick intro, Act 1 takes place in Galilee. The big question everyone's asking is, who is this Jesus as he performs all these amazing miracles? The whole book pivots right in the middle, in chapter 8, when Peter blurts out, "You are the Christ." That's the turning point. From there, Act 2 begins. The story shifts, moving toward Jerusalem, and the question changes to, okay, but what kind of Christ is he? And that's when Jesus starts teaching that he has to suffer and die. And it all wraps up with the epilogue, his resurrection.
When you put it all together, Mark's gospel is really the foundational story for the whole New Testament. It's this action-packed account of how God inaugurated a whole new covenant, a new way for people to connect with him, all through the work of his Son.
So, that leaves us with something to chew on. Mark gives us a picture of a king whose crown is made of thorns, a Messiah whose greatest power is revealed in sacrifice. So the question for us is, how does that upside-down message challenge our own modern ideas of what true strength and power really look like?